it occur? Fertilization is the process of fusion of male and female gamete. Fertilization is the process of fusion of male gamete which is present inside the anther and female gamete which is present inside the ovule. The fusion. Okay, it occurs when male gamete present in pollen grain join the female gamete or egg present in ovule. This process is called fertilization. Mating of these two things of these two gametes are called fertilization. Okay, when pollen grains fall on the stigma of carpel, when pollen grain which is present inside the anther fall on the stigma of female plant. Okay, and a tube grows out of the pollen grain. So from pollen grain a tube grows. Here you can see. Then when pollen grain falls on the stigma, stigma is sticky in nature, so pollen grain stick on the stigma. Okay, through pollen grain a tube germinating. Okay, so a tube grows out of the pollen grains and travel through the style to reach the ovary. Inside the ovary, ovule are present. So pollen grain from male part when fall on the stigma of female plant, it is stigma is sticky in nature, so it attract towards the stigma of pollen grain attract towards the stigma, and then tube like structure germinate and it travel through the style to comes to the ovary. A male gamete moves down the pollen tube. Pollen tube enters the ovule. In ovary, male gamete comes out and from this pollen grain, male gamete are present inside the pollen grain. So male gamete of pollen in ovary, male gamete of pollen combined with nucleus of female or egg present in ovule, and inside the ovary ovule is present. So in ovule female gamete are present. So when male gamete fuse to the female gamete means ovule to form a fertilized egg. After fertilization it form a egg, fertilized egg or zygote. This process is called fertilization. What is fertilization? Fertilization is the process of fusion of male gamete to female gamete and egg is produced. This process is called fertilization. Okay, now process, let's discuss about process again. When pollen grains comes from the anther of male part comes to and fall on the stigma of female part. Due to sticky in nature, pollen grain stick to the stigma. Okay, now after that a germ tube originate. Okay, a tube grows. Now this tube grows out of the pollen grain and travel through the style, and it travel through the style and comes and reach to the ovary. This is ovary. Okay, inside the ovary ovule are present and ovule contains female gamete. So male gamete moves down the pollen tube enter the ovule. In ovary male gamete comes out this pollen grains from through this pollen tube. Okay, and it fuse with the combine with the female gamete or egg present in ovule to form fertilized egg. Okay, when male gamete and female gamete fuse together it form a fertilized egg or zygote. This process is called fertilization. Now next process is after fertilization, formation of fruit and then seed. The zygote divide several times. After fertilization zygote is formed. So zygote divides several times to form embryo. After fertilization zygote form and zygote divides several times to form embryo within the ovule. It forms within the ovule. Zygote divides within the ovule and form embryo. The ovule develops a tough coat and around it. Okay, around embryo, and the ovule inside which embryo are present. So ovule develop a tough coat around it and gradually converted into seed, and ovule converted into seed. and the ovaries grows rapidly and ripens to form a fruit. And ovary, which is ovule is present inside the ovary, so ovule convert into seed and ovary grows rapidly and ripen into a fruit with seed inside it. So the other part of flower like sepals, petals, stamens, stigma, style dry up and fall off, and flower is converted into fruit. Okay, the place on plant where we had flower, we now have a fruit. In place of flower, fruit is developed. Fruit protect the seed. Inside the fruit, seed is present. The seed contains a baby plant or future plant or embryo which developed in a seedling under appropriate condition. Okay, this process is known as germination. Now, let's discuss about seed. Seed after germination form a new plants. The part of a baby in seed which develop into shoot is called plumule. The part of a baby in seed which develop into shoot is called plumule. The part of the seed which develop into shoot is called plumule, and part of which develop into root is called radicle. Here you can see the part of a seed which develop into root is called radicle, and the part which develop into shoot is called plumule. Okay, the part of seed which contain store food for baby plant is called cotyledons. This is called cotyledons, which store food for the baby plant, and the baby plant present inside a seed as is an inactive form. But when it get a suitable condition to germinate, it form a new plant out of seed, and in this way new plant get formed.